What's up? Back for another episode. Like, subscribe, share, do all those things. It's good to be back. Um, we're at the end of Lent, which is exciting.
Yeah,
You know,
it is exciting. Is it wrong of me to say that I'm always glad when land's over? If so,
yeah,
then it's wrong. Then I'm wrong because I'm always glad when land's over.
yeah. I'm always happy. I mean, Easter's just the better. I mean, spring is here. Lent's kind of like those last few weeks of winter that, at least here in the north, we keep getting storms and ice, and we had we had one day that was literally like 82 degrees, and then the next day it snowed. And not even lying. Um, so that's kind of our Lent. Um, so it's good to be heading towards spring and resurrection and having eating sugar again. Um,
Is that what you cut out?
that's what I cut out. Yeah. Although I added a prayer time as part of Lent, and I think I'm going to keep that because I liked it. But I'm definitely going to indulge in some sugar um, again. But um, so today, I wanted to dive into one of the things that angered me over the last couple of weeks. Um, I think we briefly mentioned it in our last podcast, but it just really took off because James Talarico won the nomination for Senate in Texas, and actually, I think polled popularity. He polled better than the Republican candidate out of that election, and so we got a vast swath of evangelical pastors, especially and leaders, who were condemning James Talarico and calling him the Antichrist and satanic. And because he is very much Christian, he is going to a
You're going to say that, huh?
Presbyterian seminary. What?
You're going to call him a Christian? Now you've
Oh,
crossed the
yeah.
line.
Yeah, and so I was just like appalled that they would do that, although I shouldn't have been, right? Um, Here's a man who studying to be a pastor, quotes Jesus, uses Bible verses um, within their context. He knows what he's talking about, although he's a very, very progressive theologian. But in many sense, like when he's quoting, say, Matthew 25 and, feeding the hungry and clothing the naked and giving water to those who need water. I mean, he's not being progressive. He's just reading the words of Jesus and calling us as Christians to do that. Um, I think, and then he's called satanic for saying those things. It, to me, it doesn't line up. Um, so the simple answer for that is, they're scared of him because he's a Christian he's well spoken with obviously a large following of people. Um, I think he gives a good Christian alternative to what we've seen so far over the last couple of years. Um, it seems more authentic, and less, put it bluntly, less mean, less non-loving than some of the other Christian leaders we've seen, or supposed Christian leaders we've seen. So he's definitely a threat, and so because he's a threat, the best thing evangelicals know to do is to try to call him satanic, the devil, and yeah,
I just it maddens me that evangelicals now have taken up this calling people a demon or Satan rather than just saying I disagree. It's just what is wrong with you people?
yeah. Well, they can't say they disagree because if they give him a footing, I think this was
Yeah, I
like
guess that's a good point.
James James White
Saying
wouldn't
I
let.
disagree implies that something is open to interpretation. That there could be
Yeah.
multiple perspectives on something. If you say I disagree, then yeah, I guess you're opening it up for something.
Yeah,
Good
like
point.
James White did to you, right? He refused to call you a brother in Christ
Yeah, it
because
was like the whole point of the argument is whether or not you're a Christian. I mean, well, then we're not going to have a conversation because that's not for conversation. Sorry.
yeah. Um yeah, so it's fascinating to me. So like but he's got a lot of Christians behind him, especially disenfranchised, and there's a lot of disenfranchised Christians for good reasons cuz I mean,
Yeah.
let's be
Well,
honest, the evangelical church looks nothing like Jesus right now.
and I think that you just kind of hit on part of why he's created so much hate and pushback from evangelicalism. Also, why he has gained in a random Texas in the Texas. Is he running for Texas House or is he running for U.S. House from Texas? It's
He's running for U.S. Senate from Texas.
U.S. Senate for Texas. It is a
Yeah,
Senate seat.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. What it just he's gotten so much attention because I think that he is presenting a faith, Christianity, that is not just compassionate and sensibly more Christ like, but is also more logical. Like it makes sense. And I don't know that progressive or liberal Christianity, mainline Christianity, has been able to have conversations about their doctrines and their perspectives on faith and social issues in a way that is easily stated and easily understood by a common normal person. And I think that's what has made James such a game changer in a lot of ways, and instilled so much fear within evangelicalism is his ability to rationally, kindly explain another way, and one that makes a lot more sense than a lot of the doctrines and stands within evangelicalism.
yeah. It does make logical sense. I think he kind of hits to the people that are kind of on the fringe of whether or not they want to accept Christian nationalism, right? Like that. That sounds like a good idea because I'm a Christian, and why wouldn't we want everybody to be Christian? And he makes a lot more sense to that person, right? Well, this sounds more Christian, um, and this makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we should be feeding the hungry and housing the homeless and taking care of those who don't have health care. I mean, that's what Jesus would do. And so I think that's why he's gained a lot of traction in Texas, why he's gained a lot of traction nationally. He's kind of speaking to those fringe Christians, that, and it also begs the question, like, to me, like, how much do you put Christian faith into your political, view? Because James is definitely kind of the opposite end of the spectrum from Trump, but still kind of like very much like Christian nationally, just the more progressive side of it. So it's like it got me thinking, like, okay, I really like what he's saying, but how much do I want to like really put my faith in a politician who's using verses that I like in ways in which I interpret them, to get me excited. Is that just, the same thing on the other side of the coin? I don't I think it could be. I don't think he is. He doesn't have a plan like Project 25, 25 or 2025 that the Republicans put together that was very much like scary nationalism, not even just Christian nationalism, just like white nationalism, really. So he isn't an extremist in that way, but he does, marry politics with theology. Um, and so I think it begs the question: is that okay? It might be. I don't know. It's just something I'm thinking about.
I think
Um,
it's a question that we have to ask ourselves. Part of the problem that you and I have had a really long time with evangelicalism, and it comes up here a lot in our conversations, is that evangelicals, by and large, aren't even willing to ask the difficult questions of themselves. To say, am I a Christian nationalist? Am I a white nationalist? Am I following the teachings of Jesus? Am I treating Trump like the Messiah, putting him like part of our part of our difficulty is that an unwillingness to even entertain the idea that you could be wrong or that there's more nuance to these conversations. I think you're right on. We have to ask ourselves, for those of us who might be on the opposite side of the road on some of these things, like James Talarico, et cetera, is this Christian nationalism in a different way or in a different form? If so, what needs to change? And if not, where's the difference?
Yeah, I
I,
see the difference that as unhealthy Christian nationalism is is not diverse, is not welcoming, is too narrow, right? I think a healthy nationalism, if you will, is open and welcoming of all faiths, welcoming of all types of people, um, and they just have a Christian worldview as they lead that way. So I tend to see him right now as healthy, but it could turn unhealthy.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean,
I
for me,
think
Christian nationalism is, uh, you know, how is Christian nationalism different than Muslim nationalism? How might it be different if there was a different faith there? And, is it trying to mandate Christianity, or is it trying to is it a lens or a vehicle to do better for individuals? Part of my greatest, concern with Christian nationalism is it replaces Christianity with the nation. Salvation comes not through Christ, but salvation comes through, the nation. It comes through the power of the
yeah,
nation. And so, I think is James Talarico, is Christian nationalism, is it progressive or liberal Christian nationalism? Is it trying to just instill Christianity in government in a different way? Or is it just simply using the principles of Christianity in order to guide the morality or the ethics in which we want to operate as a government? Is it helping, the poor, the marginalized? Is it lifting up um, classes of people who have been diminished? Um, that to me is
yeah.
where I try to think through the difference and nuances of those things. But it's a good question.
No, it's. I think that's good. I think that is a distinctive. Like, are you using Christian principles to better society, or are you using Christian principles, yeah, to mandate you have to be just like me, or else you're going to hell? And that's what evangelicals are doing. I see all these posts like, if you don't believe my doctrine, you're going to hell. Like Josh Howerton's latest is, if you don't believe that there is a hell, then you're going there. Which it's been hotly debated throughout all of Christian history since the time of Jesus, whether or not there is a hell. And so basically, Josh Howerton's saying half of Christendom is in hell because they didn't believe there was a hell, which is wild. But that's the sort of thing they do, right? Where they make, even if I'm arguing from an evangelical perspective, where in the evangelical theology does it say if you don't believe this doctrine, you're going to hell? It never says that, right? It
Yeah,
says, they say, if you don't confess Jesus as Lord and Savior, then you're going to hell. But
it's
that's it.
gatekeeping. It's gatekeeping of another form. It's gatekeeping Christianity. Who can be in and who can be out? The flavor of the day for Howerton apparently is whether or not you believe in hell. That's the gate. That decides whether or not you're in or out. It's going to be something completely different next week for Howerton and evangelicals. It was abortion. It was gay marriage. It was immigration. It's hell today. Just tomorrow going to be the trans issue, or conversation, which the whole trans thing is the new abortion. It's the thing that is replacing it, and but it's gatekeeping. It's all gatekeeping. On any
Yeah.
given day, I want to believe this, and so I'm going to use that to gatekeep who is a Christian and who isn't, and I'm going to find some random verse in Scripture that has nothing to do with that topic to try to allow myself to believe that I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah. It's wild.
Wild is a great word for what it
The
is. Crazy town.
the yeah, the Howerton argument for why Talarico is satanic is the fact that he believes gay people are Christian. That's his stress. Amy
In,
Stuckey, her
in the
her
in the
view is he's
80s, you listen to rock music and you're gone to
yeah.
hell.
Well, Allie Beth Stuckey. She said
Yes.
she said Talarico's is Satan because he's too empathetic, which is on brand for her, right? She wrote toxic empathy because Jesus wasn't empathetic. So, in
She
her view,
seems, she seems to have a lot of empathy for Trump. She seems to have a lot of empathy
she
for
does. She
for
does.
for for MAGA, but you can't show empathy to anything else or anyone else. Got a lot of empathy for Driscoll. You know,
Yeah, it's wild that speaking of Trump, where he bashes Robert Mueller for his death, right? Is excited about his death, but then MAGA doxes and gets people fired for celebrating Charlie Kirk's death.
Charlie Kirk.
Like, how
Yeah,
hypocritical is
and the
that?
the hypocrisy is insane. And I think everybody sees it, but everybody pretends it's just not. I just
Yeah. Well, then today, I mean, every day you can find something. Today he mails in his vote to Florida when for the last 2 years, 3 years, he's been saying mail-in votes are fraudulent and no one should mail in a vote. But yet he mails in the vote and crickets from MAGA about it, right?
I mean, if we
So
haven't figured out that what Trump actually believes, what Trump does, and what Trump thinks, are completely different things. But there is a large portion, or at least a sizable portion of America that anything Trump says is biblical truth. You know, that's
yeah,
weird. But whenever somebody like Talarico actually speaks the Bible, he's wrong. Why is he wrong? Well, because he disagrees with Trump.
yeah, and
So it has to be.
he's
So it
not
has to be wrong. No, literally, Jesus said this. Well, no, that's not. No,
no,
it
yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah, yeah. Trump told him,
Literally, just quoting scripture.
yeah, Trump told him while he was quoting scripture, his response was that he's not of Jesus, like he doesn't speak the words of Jesus, and he's like quoting Jesus. It's like, and people buy it. People buy it.
For
It's
a
just
lot of
wild.
folks, Trump is the Messiah. Trump is Jesus. You can say that's not the truth, but you've given him that power. A large portion of people.
Yeah, he is. He knows it. He says, when I say something, it is the truth. Um, so he knows he's got him by the throat, the jugular, and it's sad. And so here we have Talarico, like a legit Christian man, a legit um, politician who cares about people, and that's the thing. Like, you can respectfully disagree with his policies of how he feeds the poor, right? I think that's where government as Christians comes in. Like, we should all want to feed the poor, but we should, we should have debate on the best way to feed the poor, and have arguments and healthy debates and have different sides and be okay with a Democrat, being a Christian arguing his view and or her view, and then a Republican being a Christian arguing his or her view, and both wanting the same end, right? But
But
yet
we've
we've come to yeah. Go ahead.
well, I think that part of the thing that I'm accepting or realizing and trying to accept is we can't agree to disagree, or we can't have a conversation about the best way to feed the poor or what the Bible says on these things, because we're living in an idiocracy. There is so much idiocy and ignorance, and I don't mean ignorance necessarily in a bash you sense, but that you are truly ignorant or not understanding or have no level of comprehension at all on any topic biblically and politically. So many of us have turned theology and our politics into sound bites and clickbait titles, and what Fox News, tells us. And I'll even say what CNN tells us. We have dumbed down our understanding theology and of the political sphere. We're not reading the New York Times anymore. We're not reading the Atlantic anymore. We're not reading the New Yorker. We're not reading long essays. We just want somebody to tell us what to think, so that we don't have to understand why. And we have no ability to know how to say that James Talarico's theology, which is where his politics arise from. We have no ability to say that his theology, why it's wrong. We can only say it's wrong. Why is it wrong? Well, because he's a Democrat, or he's satanic, or because somebody told me that it's wrong. But I can't tell you why it's wrong. And so I think this is why Trump has so much control. Republicanism has so much control over evangelicalism's theology, is because they give them the easy answer. We're just going to tell you what to believe and just trust us.
Mm.
We can't agree to disagree. So whenever we encounter something that we can't explain, like James Talarico's theology, we can't explain why it's wrong. We just have to say he's Satan. We have to say he's demonic. We have to say he's a heretic, because that releases us from responsibility of knowing why. I can just look at him and say,
Hmm.
you're of Satan. I don't have to understand why you're wrong. I just have to know that you're satanic.
Yeah, and they don't want people investigating it either
Oh
because
no! And
you know,
evangelicalism's entire history, right? It's been, don't look into
yeah,
this. Don't research this topic. Don't research the politics and the theologies of abortion. Don't research the politics and the theologies of hell. Don't research the politics and theologies of any social issue, right? Like, don't ask
yeah, yeah,
questions. And whenever people
yeah,
start asking questions, what happens? They get labeled a deconstructionist, and that's evil, and you're out. So,
yeah.
drink the Kool-Aid. Don't ask any questions. If you begin to have doubt or uncertainty, you better figure that out, because this isn't a safe place to ask questions.
I remember at Cedarville, one of our Bible professors told us, somebody asked a question about N.T. Wright, what N.T. Wright said, and they said, "Don't read N.T. Wright," and they basically implied that he was
What?
evil, right? A bad
Yeah, are
theologian.
you allowed to divulge who the professor was, or not? Is it too far to do that? Should we not? Having gone to
Um,
Cedarville as well, I'm quite interested in this. So if you don't feel comfortable saying it online, you gotta let me know offline.
it was
Who it was, but it's
it was the
crazy,
but I
right?
remember
I mean, it
I
happens.
wrote it down because it was the first time I heard N.T. Wright's name, and I wrote it down, and I was like, I have to read him. Like that was me, my defiant self. I have to read him.
I love the
Uh,
revolutionary. I love the revolutionary side of
uh,
you. But this is right. I mean, and there is. I mean, yeah. I mean, the fear is you'll get these ideas in your head, and it will mess up your faith, and it will give you doubt. And I believe that line of thinking for a long time, until I stepped back and said, well, if your argument is more airtight, or is better than, or more correct than the thing that's going to cause my faith to doubt or deconstruct, I think that's the deal, right? Is there's not a trust or a belief that Cedarville's position, that the evangelical position, that the positions, that oftentimes that I held, it wasn't a trust. that our position or our thinking was airtight. And so
Yeah.
you have to reject any questions or alternate perspectives. It's why, why there's this end of expertise. Don't send your kid to public school. Don't send, homeschool them. Don't send your kid to a public college. Their faith is going to be destroyed. You know, that's why there's this whole argument against education or against knowledge or understanding, is because there's this fear that 6,000 year young Earth creation can't stand up against the science that they're going to be taught. Well, why is
Hmm.
that? Not because the science is wrong and you're right. It's because you're probably wrong. And God gave us brains, right? Like you and I have talked about this up here. Like critical thinking is a gift that has been given to us that we have now relinquished and pushed back and said, no, we don't want to think critically or think through things. We don't want to challenge or be challenged. We're moving ourselves, and I know this isn't like a politically correct term, but we're moving ourselves as Christians and as a nation too, maybe, but especially Christians are leading the way back into the dark ages, where it's like, we're stepping away, from knowledge for different reasons that happened in the Middle Ages, but we're willfully relinquishing knowledge and truth in order to believe things that are lies
Mm.
because they make us feel better. It's easier, ostensibly, to just be a yes man and to believe things that aren't true and ignore the other things. Yeah, it's easier for now, but then you get Trump 2.0 whenever that happens, right? You get Mark
Yeah,
Mulling
and
as DHS secretary. You get idiots, people who have no education, and have no experience, leading entire major segments and sections of your nation. And it happens, and I think is happening in the church as well. Whenever you do that, you get idiots like Howerton without much education or experience becoming the leading thinkers and influencers for an entire segment of Christianity. We're mirroring the government, and what we're doing and allowing and wanting in government is mirroring what we're doing and wanting and allowing in the church. And I don't know which came first, which is driving the other, but it's the same thing as happening in both in idiocracy.
yeah, I like that term, idiocracy. I think the political system leads the church, the evangelical church. I think because we've gotten to a point now where we don't agree that we should feed the poor, because to have empathy for somebody who's poor is toxic now, and that's all
Yourself up by your
politically driven.
bootstraps. Work for what
Yeah,
you
yeah,
should get.
yeah. So like we've lost the heart of who Christ is for politics, and that's why Talarico's evil. One of the reasons is because he preaches Jesus, and that goes against our political system. Because now we no longer think. I mean, even just a few short years ago, when Bush was president, he enacted Republican policy to help feed the poor, to help those in poverty, and to try to alleviate those who are impoverished through Republican policy. And now we literally shut that whole thing down. I mean, literally, Trump went in and
Yeah.
completely shut it all down. The
I'm not I'm
USAID
not an
stuff was all
expert in
Bush
in the Democrat side, but what we have
stuff.
right now is not republicanism or it's not conservatism. It's
No,
something
no.
completely different. And you're right. I mean, you just have to kind of look back on classic republicanism, classic conservatism, and yeah, for all of my issues with it, there was still empathy. There was still, I think, a desire to help other people, to lift other people up, for us to be better and to help others to be better as well. Very different methodologies behind Republicans' ideas of how to do that and Democrats' ideas of how to do that. But I think the goal was to lift everybody up, for everybody to be better. I mean, even with capitalism, I think so many people bought into this idea of capitalism, especially in the 80s and under Reaganomics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. because there was this idea, that trickled down, that if the wealthier got wealthier, that would trickle down, and everybody would do better. That didn't happen. The opposite of that happened. But that was the goal, and I don't think that's the goal anymore. In politics, I don't think that's the goal, especially in whatever this new thing is that isn't conservative republicanism, but is some MAGA self-focused narcissistic "to hell with you" thing.
It's trickle up policy.
Yeah, but the church has mirrored that, right? In the death of
Yeah,
the toxic empathy. Those two words together are oxymorons, right? Like jumbo
yeah,
shrimp. Military intelligence, toxic empathy. Like, those two words shouldn't be together, but the church puts it together because they have to make, for whatever reason, now evangelicalism has to make empathy toxic. We Living like Jesus has to be toxic because we don't want that, because we might help somebody who's brown or gay or had an abortion or who's female, and we can't help those people because they're living in sin
yeah.
by our
That
definition.
you hit the nail on the head. I think. Yeah, I mean that's and that we don't want to give them money. We don't want to give them help. Um, and so we have to call it toxic so we don't deal with that because it's not helpful to us. And in reality, it is helpful to us. It's a rising tide rises everybody. So I think the better off all of our society is, I think the better off we all are. Um, and I think, yeah, I don't know what this is. It's wild. But evangelicals have bought it hook, line, and sinker. And they'll say whatever they need to say to defend it, to fight for it, and then if it's just so obviously hypocritical, they just are silent on it and won't say a word. In fact, we'll probably even tell some of their followers not to say a word, to shut up and to be quiet, and say it's not our role to speak out and speak up about that. And it's like, well, what is our role then? Like, obviously, our role is to speak up on the things that are positive that help our cause, but to speak against things that maybe go against our worldview, we have to be silent on.
I think our role has become, as evangelicals and Christians, policing how everybody lives their lives. I don't know that it extends beyond that, just
Mm,
being the Gestapo, being the police for everybody
yeah,
on any given day. Like we said, it's hell today, abortion yesterday, it's trans tomorrow. I don't know what Thursday is, but
yeah,
I'll know whenever I pull it up and start seeing it being said.
that's true. They just want to control our lives.
And I don't
um,
want to, I don't want to, I don't want to hit the Pharisees here. I know that that's a tough topic, but this is one of Jesus' primary contentions with, the religious leaders, was that they were policing things, policing the wrong things. They were paying attention to the wrong things in his summation, and had missed the greater importance, because the religious leaders had largely turned into policing the lives of others, and Jesus was like, there's more to faith, there's more to God than this. I think we're there.
mm,
It just become a police. Christianity has become a police state rather than what is we said, growing up a hospital, for people who are hurting and in need. We're not that anymore. We don't want to be that anymore. And we don't want our country to be that either as Christians, which just fascinates me. I'm not going to help
yeah,
you.
well,
I don't want my
yeah, that's
religion to
interesting.
help you, and I don't want my nation to help you either.
Yeah, it's easier to grow. I think a lot of it has to do with power and influence because it's easier to grow something
Mm.
if you can control it all, right? If you can be a gatekeeper, it actually becomes a little easier to grow things. Yeah, that's interesting. These
There's no
guys, they,
benefit to the church though in gatekeeping. I mean, I can see the
yeah,
benefit, to politicians, and maybe to a couple of, the top paid pastors or people who think they have a voice in Trump's ear. But what benefit is there to Christianity or to the church in gatekeeping,
yeah,
help and assistance and police? Like there's no payoff spiritually, eternally, practically that I can see,
yeah,
other than, I can do the pilot and wash my hands of helping anybody and getting involved and go about my way and live my life without fear of or worry
yeah,
of having to worry about the homeless person or person of color or the woman or how they're treated. I don't know.
yeah. This is interesting to think about. Something we're studying, and looking into. I feel like is like because cults pop up all the time, and some of them get really huge, and they're huge gatekeepers, right? Like this is what it means to be part of this cult, this group. You have to keep this, and like humans just get sucked into it. It's almost like Jesus destroys that cult attitude. Like he destroys that cult system of control. And that's what he does with, the Pharisaical system. He obviously welcomes Pharisees. I mean, Nicodemus is a classic one. So it's not like he's completely against Pharisees, but he's against that system. Um, and I think it's a similar system of evangelicalism. I think, there's other systems too that are similar that Christ wants to tear down, and he welcomes everybody. He welcomes, he even invites Judas to his table, knowing Judas betrayed him. He welcomes Peter back after denying him. He's always open and welcome, which the evangelical church wouldn't. Let's be honest. I mean, like you could, it's all over the news now because we have all sorts of online reporting of pastors and leaders who fall and um, and there's no welcome. There's like very um, even among progressives, we're not very kind and loving towards
Yeah,
uh
there's I think you make a good point. There's not a strong sense of anyone wanting to be seen like being like Jesus on the outside,
yeah.
really on maybe any side. A little
Yeah,
surprising and concerning, and I don't know how, like, how do you want to be seen? What do you want to be the one sentence that people say about you? If it's not they live like Jesus or they act like Jesus,
yeah.
don't what's the goal? What's the point? What's the mark that defines who we are if it's not that?
Yeah, we as humans, I think we want to be seen as the power broker, the one who did it, who was successful. And Jesus tells us the first shall be last. What does he tell, you know, John and Peter that be last, be a servant of all. It's not about who's first, who has the power. In fact, give up your power. And on both sides of the coin in Christianity, we want the power. We can't give it up. We can't help others. Um, it's fascinating. It's fascinating,
Yeah, it
and
makes a lot of sense.
we get excited when you know they use Mark Driscoll. I mean, evil, evil pastor, but you know, um, what if he repented and I of his sin? Would some of the progressive voices welcome him? I don't think so.
It would be
Yeah,
tough. It would be difficult.
yeah. I mean, I'd have a hard time too. So I'm not saying I'm better, but it's just that to me that's a good example. It's like, well, Jesus would welcome him, you know, um, and Jesus wants to restore relationship with him. Um, so yeah, it's interesting to think about. Um, Yeah, so don't believe what you hear on the internet about James Talarico. I don't think that he's of Satan, and I think that he what he's preaching is right on, and is something that even when I was evangelical, I would be excited about what he was saying. But when I was evangelical, if somebody I looked up to, like Josh Howerton, was telling me he's of the devil, I'd probably just like believe it and be like, I was missing something, in this. I didn't, maybe I didn't see or hear something that my, my Savior, Lord and Savior Josh Howerton saw. Um, but I would enjoy what I heard because teaching, he's not really preaching and talking about things that are outside they're really not progressive. They're really biblical, he has in church settings, and they, quote him on this, which I agree with him on, is being open and affirming of, the LGBTQI community. But his political platform is really not built on those things. It's really built on healthcare, feeding the poor, being welcoming to, being welcoming to the LGBTQ community, but he's not like preaching about it, being welcoming to other faiths. Um, so all good things to me. And I do enjoy his actual sermons. If you haven't, he's pretty good. Sometimes I feel like because doesn't he follow you on the Twitterverse?
Yeah, I think he does.
Yeah, I listened to one of his sermons at his church, and I thought he might be quoting you, but
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever heard I don't know that I've ever heard a sermon from him.
mm,
Though it feels like oftentimes the politics, that he preaches feel like a sermon. I guess maybe in a way, a little. This is a really terrible comparison, but I have no other comparison because it's so rare. But very similar to Martin Luther King or a Jesse Jackson,
mm,
some of these folks who when they're speaking in this political sphere, the cadence and the character of a pastor or a minister or of a preacher. And James, anytime I kind of hear
yeah,
him like speaking long form rather than just answering questions, it feels like you're getting a bit of a sermon. But
oh
I
yeah,
don't think that I've ever listened to. I don't know that I even knew he was a pastor.
well
He was
he's
in school, but I don't know that
yeah,
I don't know. I never consider the fact that he probably preaches, in
yeah,
pulpits, as any good seminary student, should and would before, during, and after seminary.
well, the reason why I heard it is because Howerton was bashing him for being a trans supporter, and he was quoting him, which I didn't disagree with the Talarico quote that he gave, but I was curious where it came from, and it was from a sermon he gave at his church, so I listened to it, and it was pretty good, but it sounded like he listened to one of our podcasts at one time, very similar stuff, but he's a
Maybe we
very
should reach out to him and see if he wants to come on sometime.
yeah, that'd be great. Uh, but yeah, he's a very good orator. He, has great cadence. And he's good. He's rememberable. Like he obviously he figures out phrases to repeat over and over that people walk away remembering. Like his newest one is, coming back at Trump for saying he doesn't preach Jesus, um, or Jesus wouldn't preach like that. And Talarico's like, Jesus wouldn't take away healthcare. Jesus wouldn't, you know, not feed the poor. And he goes on a whole list of things that Trump has done that aren't like Jesus, which is pretty awesome.
Well,
Um,
what I love that Talarico is doing is he's changing the conversation around both faith and politics and what they look like and how they intersect. And it's scary, for a lot of people
mm,
because evangelicalism in general, but a specific stream of evangelicalism has had a very strong hold the narrative of what is they've been gatekeeping, what is Christianity and what isn't for a very long time. You get the Al Mollers, you get the Paige Pattersons, you get, the folks out there who over the years have had a very strong hold over what it means to be a Christian in the public space. Falwell, Jerry Falwell, and Talarico is presenting a very different vantage point of what that can look like and what that should look like, and that's, I think, scary for a lot of folks, and understandably so. And I think that's good for us to have a different viewpoint, even if it doesn't change the way we think on issues or the way that we vote. I think it's pretty positive. Certainly not satanic.
Yeah, no, I agree, and
Unless you have something to lose, then you might see it as being satanic. If you have something to
yeah,
lose,
yeah,
I think you should probably
I
listen
think
to the people who are calling things demonic or satanic. Um, People who are preaching
yeah,
Christ, or trying to draw people to Christian principles.
he he was intelligent to jump on the Christian train though, since they are leaning into this Christian nationalism nationwide. So it's like, oh, you want to talk about Jesus? Let's talk about Jesus, right? Um, and others have tried. You know, Pete Buttigieg tried. He does try, but I think unfortunately for him, he is a gay man, and it's harder to cross the bridge in this day and age, as you know, as you well know.
Yeah, well, he's a Democrat.
You
He's a
know,
gay. He's a gay man, an openly gay man, a proud gay man, and he also, you know, to his credit, but also to his political. It's not always a political asset, especially today. Is Pete Buttigieg is brilliant. He is a very smart individual, and that comes across in a way that sometimes for some people disconnects.
yeah,
He's not the everyman that Obama, kind of, he doesn't have that same kind of charisma. No,
no, yeah, that's great.
and
That's
so
a
I,
great
I
point.
think I,
But
I think those three things together, as you said, his sexuality, the fact that he's a kind of a boring white bread Democrat,
yeah,
and that makes him. Uh, the, Talarico does not have those same, I will call them, liabilities. I think knowledge is an asset. I think Buttigieg's
all of
sexuality
it's
is
an
an asset,
asset. Yeah,
but in the political sphere today, it is not. And Talarico, I think Talarico exceeds Buttigieg in likability, certainly in ability to resonate with the Christian audience. Part of the reason why he's getting so many satanic, demonic, so much pushback is because he resonates with a Christian audience. And so, he's getting flamed because people are trying to diminish that. And Buttigieg
yes,
just, for all of Buttigieg's amazing qualities, doesn't resonate or come across in the same way Talarico does. And I
yeah.
think
Well,
people
that's just it.
recognize that.
Yeah, I think Talarico hits the average Christian nationalist MAGA guy who's kind of on the fence, who's a Christian, who's evangelical, right? He looks like him. He kind of sounds like him. He grew up the same way. Yeah. So all the things you said, but yeah, he resonates well with that. And they're open right now because of lots of reasons: Epstein files, the war in Iran, the just the hypocrisy they see constantly. And so then here's this guy. Oh, you know, I can resonate with that guy. And he's preaching what I hear in my from my pastors on Sunday, which is crazy because most evangelicals will be preaching some of those passages Talarico is preaching in the same exact way, right? Uh,
Isn't that funny though?
yeah,
That there is not, the degree of difference is very small in what Talarico would preach, and what would be preached in most evangelical conservative pulpits.
yeah.
The
Like
political lens makes it
when they're
feel or seem like.
raising money for mission trips, they're preaching Matthew 25. Where were you when you clothed the naked and fed the hungry? They're preaching the same way to give us your money for this mission trip. Same thing. Same thing. Yeah.
It's a great point. It really is. I don't know what
So
we do. I don't know what we do with it. it's
I know. I just
it's a really valid point, you know. And maybe that's, you know, what the things that you know, we were raised with is, you know, do your actions match your words, you know. Are you the same person on Sunday morning, you know, that you are on Monday morning in the world, you know, or are you wearing it, like all of these things about, you know, there being this energy and this unity, you know, in all areas and facets of your life. I think that that's maybe the question we have to ask ourselves is, you know, like you said, are the things that we're preaching on Sunday morning and hearing in our pulpits diametrically opposed to the things that we're trying to do in our politics and in our workplaces and in our voting?
yeah.
And I see, I've been on the other side of it though. I see how Talarico's message is far closer, you know, to mirroring, I think, faith and how that faith works itself out in the political sphere. The things that he's calling for, you know, with his stance on social issues. But I've been on the other side too, so I can understand the argument on the other side. But I think you're ignoring a lot what Jesus said and meant and what the Bible says in order to get
Well,
there.
they used to have the argument that with U.S. aid, that was a whole Republican thing that Bush implemented, and that the
Right?
church should use that the church should do the work, right? So then the
Yeah,
church groups would apply for these grants, the government would give them, then the church would do the work. That was the whole argument. And now we've taken it completely away. So no one's doing the work. And now we're justifying that by and saying, no, that's not what Jesus was talking about. That's toxic. Right. So,
I think we did.
all right.
Both sides do this a lot of times, but we decide what we want to believe, and then we find a verse to help justify it.
Yeah. No, you're right. So I think the politics is leading the way on this for evangelicals. I
You
think,
know, I've not been sure, honestly, but after this conversation, I think I kind of agree with you. I think you've convinced me that the, you know, I thought that the church was leading the politics bad, but I think you're right after kind of thinking through it and diving into what we've talked about today. The politics is leading the church.
yeah, I mean, if, yeah, I think the theology of evangelicals with the PSA and some of the things have opened the door and for the politicians to take advantage of them, and they just kicked the door down, and just manipulated them completely.
Yeah,
The
there's,
fact
I
that
think,
they've
a
changed,
fear of becoming irrelevant or becoming non-white.
yeah,
You know, and
the
I think that
the
there's a lot of embedded racism still within white evangelicalism that was
yeah
that was preyed upon.
the immigration thing is where I realized that, to me, the politics is leading the church, because my denomination I was part of forever, like, stood firm no matter who was in political office, what the immigration policies were. They were all about refugees and resettlement, and now they're not. Um,
Mm.
that's changed. Why did
That's the
that
whole
change?
title of your denomination you grew up in. Like it's
Yeah,
like the linchpin. It's
yeah,
in the name itself.
yeah, yeah. So that was disheartening to see. I know some of my friends would say they're still about it, but organizationally, we backed way off, um, and it's only because we're scared of Trump and MAGA, and so now that's driving our stance, our view, and sad, very sad. So, anyways, that's really all I have to say about that. I don't know if you had anything else, but
I,
it
I
was
think you've
getting in my crawl.
I think you've said it well. You ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. All right, the last few seconds of our time together, where Matt and I go to confessional as to how our fitness journeys are going.
Mm.
I have a friend or two here who's, you know, trying to get on the wagon, back off the wagon. It's fun to see somebody start, you know, new and, you know, counting calories, you know, going to the gym. Should I be here twice? Should I do more cardio? Should I do? more weightlifting. It's kind of fun to be with somebody as they're just on the starting edge. And it's also maddening at times as well because you're like, just do what I tell you to do, and
Oh
it
yeah, yeah.
doesn't happen. How are things? How are things going for you in the fitness world?
Pretty good. We were in the CrossFit Open that just finished last week.
Yeah,
So
and
it was good. I did better than I thought for the most part. I mean, it wasn't my best showing ever, but it was better than the last 2 years. So I'm happy with that. And so I was pretty disciplined through that process. Like, you know, I've learned, especially as you get older, if you want to do well in those workouts, you got to have everything locked in. So, um,
did they throw anything
yeah.
crazy in the workouts? I remember in the past they would always like throw in stuff like handstand, walks backwards,
Yeah,
or like
I
crazy
know.
things,
Yeah.
that like only
Uh,
5% of people can do. Was there anything like just crazy, or was it just a standard good
well,
kick your butt workouts?
yeah, it was standard good kick your luck workouts because they learned over the years that people just quit the open on that stuff, and they wanted mass involvement, which they did get that, and then but where it was like crazy was the time caps on these work, which was great because it saved
Yeah,
us from dying, but to see the elites like finish some of these workouts in the time cap was pretty amazing.
yeah.
When I'm only getting maybe halfway through, most humans are only getting halfway through and they're finishing it. So that was pretty neat to see. Um, but yeah, they did. There's a lot of complaining online uh, from folks about that, but
I mean, complaining
I
online is fine. I mean, complaining online just
yeah.
got shut down. One of my favorite shows, Star Trek, Starfleet Academy, because people complain.
Oh.
So I just it's the world that we
Yeah,
live in. It's if you complain enough about something online and people know this, then you'll get it to change because every business is scared of
yeah. Uh,
is scared
I
of
do like.
dying or
I mean, it is called the Open, so I like the fact that it's open to anybody playing, and I think that's how you expand. Getting more people trying CrossFit. Because if they look at a workout that they can't imagine ever even doing one rep on, they're not going to sign up for it. So um, I like the philosophy, but some of the purists don't like it because they remember the days where we started an open workout. You probably still doing CrossFit when you start the first movement on the CrossFit Open was a ring muscle up, you know. So all of us got zero who couldn't do ring muscle up.
Mhm.
So yeah, those days are over.
I was OG with CrossFit. My first CrossFit class was in 2000, maybe.
Wow, yeah, that's early. Yeah, because that was a time when it started expanding more
Yeah, there
east.
was only like
Yeah,
one box in each major city, like Cleveland, like the entire Northeast Ohio only had one, CrossFit. And then
yeah,
like churches split, over leadership, disagreements. CrossFit split, and so they were two boxes
yeah,
in Cleveland, and
yeah.
I went to the other one that had split off from the original. But yeah, back in the day. You couldn't even
That's
like
cool.
CrossFit didn't even have like websites like to find out about CrossFit. You had to like go to like I was on searching random message boards to try to figure out what CrossFit
Well,
was and
yeah,
and
their
what they
first
did. It
website
was
was a message board. That first website, all it was a message
well,
board. Yeah, it was
that
so
must have been where I
wonky.
was. Because I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
I'm on
yeah,
message boards, so
yeah,
that must have been yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Oh my gosh, I didn't even
yeah.
dang. Well, congrats on finishing the open. I hope you at least showed well enough, to show up some people in
Yeah,
your
it was
community.
it was good. I had a couple good workouts. It was and it's motivating to keep you going, you know, to know what you need to fix for
Yeah,
next time.
I'm at the end of the bulk, and so I just everything is sluggish. Everything just none of the clothes are fitting. Like everything's like ah. So I'm ready to start cutting things back down a little bit. But I was at the gym this week, and there was another guy who had taken the nicer squat rack. And so I'm on the dinky squat rack, and he's lifting, and I'm like, I can lift that. But it was like 25, 225 plates, higher than my normal lift, what I normally lift. But I'm like, I can 1 or 3 rep max more than he's lifting. So, stupid old man throw, 50 pounds more on the bar than I usually have been squatting. And second squat down and up, I feel it in my back.
Uh,
Dang. So yes, I was fortunately already on muscle relaxers for TMJ things, old man issues, right? I was already on
yeah.
muscle relaxers. I didn't have to go to the doctor to get anything the last few days. I've not been able to lift,
Oh
the
man.
back pain. It's getting better, Fortunately, I'm smart enough and this has happened enough to be like, once you feel it, it's like, don't push through it. Don't keep going, stop. And so thankfully I did that, did not more seriously injure myself. So I don't think I'm that out of the gym for like 6 to 8 weeks, but I'm probably out of the gym for a few days or maybe a week. When it's your back, it's like
Yeah.
everything uses the core, upper body, lower body,
Yeah.
like everything requires that back to engage. And so when it's like that mid back area, I'm like, I can't. This is me,
Yeah.
old man problems. But I'm proud of you for making it through.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. The back. I have lower back soreness too from it. Um, Getting old sucks, man.
Yeah.
Getting old
Well,
sucks.
just keep going until you can't go anymore, right?
That's right.
All right. See
Well,
you
good to
next
be
week, man.
on. Have a good one.
Take care.